morning. We'll begin today's festivities by inviting Judge Fisher's grandchildren to come forward and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Be seated. Well, welcome to a great occasion celebrating a great career. I do want to give special welcome to a number of this morning's guests. Several of the representatives of the executive branch are here. They'll speak later, but state officers who are here include Todd Rokita, our Secretary of State, soon to be a member of the United States House of Representatives. Next to him, Greg Zeller, Attorney General of Indiana. Thank you for coming. And next to him, Jim Holden, who is here for our Treasurer of State. Thanks for being present. Now, right next to them are three people with sort of expectant air on their faces. Marty Wentworth, Judge Karen Love, and Jody Gerals, all who have been nominated to Governor Daniels with hopes for further service ahead. I'd like also to recognize our friend Judge Michael Caney from the United States Court of Appeals for the Seventh Circuit. Thank you for coming down. A number of us will have great things to say about Judge Fisher this morning. The first of those is the Chief Judge of the Indiana Court of Appeals, John Baker, who in a few weeks will be turning over his assignment to Judge Margaret Robb, who's the new Chief Judge of that court. Apropos of this morning, one of the things that Judge Baker will also turn over as he leaves office as Chief Judge is his seat as a member of the Director of the Indiana Judges Association. He has been a Director of the Indiana Judges Association for 32 years. And when he became a member, his uncle, Judge Lester Baker, was a member and had been a member for perhaps a decade and a half before that. The Indiana Judges Association was founded when Franklin Roosevelt was in the White House, and John and his uncle have been part of its leadership for 2/3 of that time. Chief Judge Baker.
Thank you, sir. On behalf of my colleagues and our staff, I want to join those who will congratulate our friend Tom on his illustrious service to our beloved state. For the past 2 decades and a half, Tom has shared a courtroom with us, sat with us in swearing-in ceremonies, joined us in collegial luncheons, and accompanied us for ceremonial events. But what we recognize most about Tom is his everlasting devotion to the rule of law and the importance of an independent and fair-minded judiciary. Some of you have heard me say that the best sermon is a good example. We believe that Tom exemplified what is good in an excellent judge, and we have been honored to have him join us in all of our activities over all of these years. Our colleague, Judge Ezra Zeke Friedlander, has recounted to us the famous or maybe infamous F troop from law school, which was Fisher, Friedlander, former Representative and lobbyist Tom Frichtenick, Representative Ralph Foley, and others with the last name of F. Well, it appears to us that the row did pretty well, and Tom, you have made F Troop proud. Moreover, we thank Tom for doing all of these tax cases. Without him, we would have been hearing these appeals from trial courts who would have been hearing them originally. As our Supreme Court deals with the death cases and Tom handles the tax cases, my colleagues and I can be said to be lawyers who have avoided death and taxes.
That's lovely.
Tom, you have made some dear friends with my colleagues and me, and we look forward to continuing that friendship in the future. We thank you for your service to our state, our profession, and the judiciary. But mostly, Tom, we thank you for being our friend. Good luck.
Thank you. Thanks so much to David Pippen, General Counsel to Governor Daniels. David Pippen has held that role for the last year or so. Before that, he was Senior Policy Director for the Governor. And before that, a part of the firm of Plews, Shadley, Racher, and Braun. Thank you for coming this morning.
Judge Baker, Chief Justice Shepard, Judge Fischer, the Governor sends his most warm-felt thank you and congratulations on the service that you've given this state. Chief Judge Baker talks about the folks that got to avoid the tax decisions that you have taken. I can't imagine a governor who appreciates the decisions that you've made over these many years more than this governor. And the body of law that you've established is something that it truly is special and a large part of why this state is what it is, financially, business, and as a profession, as lawyers who get to practice in front of the tax court and the other courts. When the governor's scheduling conflicts came up, I said, Governor, I'd be happy to say a few words about Judge Fischer. And he looked at me, and unless you're Solicitor General Fischer, there's not a lot of folks that get to talk on behalf of the governor. And he looked at me and he said, well, what are you going to say? I said, well, you have to understand, Governor, I met Tom in 1988. I knew Judge Fischer before I had to appear in front of him, but when I did, my first reported decision is from 1997, and I had 85 reported decisions out of the tax court of the over 800 that Judge Fischer wrote. So I think I've got a perspective on the kind of judge that he is. And it's also a reflection of the kind of lawyer that I am. For those of you that know the tax court, when I started it was still kind of the Wild West. The record didn't come up, so we retried every one of our cases in front of Judge Fischer. So, but during my tenure of practicing in front of him, the state started doing a better job of developing a record and treating him as an appellate court as he should be. So I got to learn both trial court practice and appellate practice under fire and the watchful eye of Judge Fischer. And it actually brought me to appreciate Tom a lot more, because the 8 years that I was practicing in front of Judge Fischer, I realized shaped the 18 years or so of hands-on that created the Solicitor General that has served the state so well. But I truly believe that I am a much better lawyer today having practiced in front of Judge Fischer. He was patient, he was firm, he had high expectations, and he treated everybody fairly. It didn't matter what kind of client I brought in. It didn't matter what kind of argument I made. It was going to be heard fairly, it was going to be ruled fairly, and it was going to be explained. So I didn't have to say, I don't know why he decided that. And that's the worst thing a lawyer can do, is go to their client and say, well, we lost, and I don't know why. Judge Fischer did a fantastic job of explaining it. And because of that, it allows lawyers to explain to their clients, here's what the rules are, here's why we do what we do. He's created a body of law, and he's created a tax court, a system that this state truly should be thankful of. But part of the success that he's had is many governors, many lawyers don't have to pay attention. If you can avoid the taxes, if you can avoid those issues, you know that Judge Fisher has taken care of them, and that area of law isn't one that you get a lot of controversy, but for maybe one case that bounced around for a while. It's also a really daunting task to be a small portion of the team that gets to choose his successor. When folks come in and interview and sit and talk to me, in my mind, it's always Judge Fisher that I'm looking to replace. I'm not just helping choose a tax court judge. I'm looking at somebody that has to step into those shoes. And I'm sorry to the folks that had to sit in interviews with me, because you're held to a very high standard. The expectations are really high, and I hope that we come to a sound decision, and I hope that whoever that person is carries the tradition of the excellence that Judge Fisher has set. So, because I don't get paid in hourly fees anymore, I'll cut it off at this point. But Judge, thank you personally. Thank you on behalf of the governor. You've done the state a tremendous service.
Great. Thank you, Dave. I'll next call on Judge Robyn Moberly, who has been a judge of the Marion Superior Court since she was first elected in 1996. All of you would know that her superb record of service led the nominating commission to name her recently as a finalist for the Supreme Court of our state. She is here this morning in her capacity as Vice President of the Indiana Judges Association. Judge Moberly.
Thank you. Judge Fisher, Chief Justice, Chief Judge Baker, members of the Supreme Court and of the Court of Appeals, I am most honored today to be here today representing the Indiana Judges Association and hence all the judges across the state of Indiana, in recognizing the extraordinary career of Judge Fisher and to express our deep appreciation for a job quite well done. Judge Fisher, you've been instrumental in defining tax law in our state for 24 years. The wheels of commerce move much more smoothly because of the settled expectations established by Judge Fisher in his role as the tax court judge. Your work has been thoughtful and well-reasoned. You have brought honor upon the judiciary in your professional and personal accomplishments as well as your contributions. One can accurately say you are one of a kind. This occasion gave me the opportunity to do a little recon on Judge Fisher. And I discovered something that I didn't know, and I suspect many folks in this room do not know. In addition to being an avid Rotarian, which of course is probably widely known, and an avid reader, I learned that you have a deep interest and sincere concern for Africa and its people. Being a man who cares about the welfare and the future of the African people, I thought that you might appreciate and enjoy the opportunity to do some micro-lending to small startup businesses in Africa. So the Judges Association would like to present you with a gift certificate from Kiva, which is an organization dedicated to connecting people through micro-lending for the sake of alleviating poverty. Kiva promotes dignity, accountability, and transparency. All of those are characteristics and traits that I think you have demonstrated through your work on the tax court. What better way to help the people of Africa than to help them stand on their own feet? I hope you enjoy using this gift certificate to make small loans to individuals who want the opportunity to stand on their own. And while you sit at your computer considering to whom you wish to make loans, I hope you will get into the spirit of Africa while wearing this original African shirt that was sent to me by two former Peace Corps volunteers who actually lived in Mali, Africa, and they currently run an agricultural sustainability co-op in Mali. So we wish you well.
like Ted Boehm, you can wear it at the end of the ceremony. Yeah. That'll be great. I'll next call on leaders of our state's legal profession. Rod Morgan, as you know, a partner in Bingham McHale, was until a few weeks ago president of the Indiana State Bar Association. He's joined today by Larry Stroble of the tax section of the State Bar. Larry Stroble has been a part of the firm of Barnes and Thornburg for almost 35 years, and his name is commonly used as an answer to the question, how can we find somebody who knows the answer to this tax question? Call on the team of Morgan and Stroble.
Mr. Chief Justice, Judge Baker, Judge Fisher, if my presence here indicates anything, is that you may not want to put away your robe too far. I've been called upon to represent the 14,000 lawyers of the state of Indiana to express our appreciation for the good job you've done in the tax court and to make a presentation that is not very difficult to open, contrary to what we had last. And I want to cede the rest of my time to Larry Stroble.
Mr. Chief Justice, members of the court and other distinguished guests and members of the judiciary, as Rod said, I'm here representing the Indiana State Bar Association today, and in that capacity, I'd like to speak on behalf of the many lawyers who have practiced before Judge Fisher in the tax court over the years. And this would include lawyers who have represented taxpayers, attorneys from the Attorney General's office who have represented the interests of the state and local governments, and private practice attorneys who have represented county assessors and other local government officials. In 1985, when the legislature passed the bill that would create the tax court in the following year, 1986, there were only a handful of courts in the United States that specialized in tax issues and were part of the judiciary of those states. So to some extent, the Indiana Tax Court was an experiment in how to deal with tax cases within a judicial system. So what was the legislature's purpose in creating the tax court? The answer is fairly apparent to those of us who've been around long enough to have practiced in the circuit and superior courts before 1986. We would travel around the state to the various county courts where the taxpayers either resided or where they had their business locations. And we appeared before judges who did not seem very excited at all when we would tell them we're there to litigate the double decline and balance method of depreciation. Or we would say we have some very interesting issues today, Your Honor, about the consolidated return regulations. Their eyes would glaze over before we could get through the opening statement, and to be quite honest, I think in most cases their eyes glazed over when they saw us walking into the courtroom. More importantly, the trial level decisions were unreported, and they served as precedent only for the parties that were before that trial court. The only published decisions were those of the Supreme Court and the Court of Appeals. And there were even some instances in which the different panels of the Court of Appeals had issued conflicting decisions on the same tax issue. So I believe that what the legislature wanted was a court that had statewide jurisdiction over all tax cases. It would be staffed by a judge who is a tax expert, and it could issue opinions that would serve as precedent for all taxpayers and government agencies in the state. Well, let me say that the legislature's goals have been very well served under Judge Fisher's leadership. Judge Fisher quickly developed the expertise to handle the full range of complex tax issues for cases all over the state, and he's decided cases that had momentous impact on the state in cases such as the Town of St. John property tax decisions. Now, as was mentioned, the judge has issued over 800 opinions in his career, and according to my count, using Lexis, approximately 640 of those were published decisions with statewide precedential effect. I also did a count of all of the published tax decisions before 1986, before the creation of the tax court, going all the way back to the 1890s. And using a method I think was pretty reliable, if not perhaps exactly precise, I came up with a little over 500 published decisions. So you can see that in Judge Fisher's years on the bench, he has issued more published tax decisions for the guidance of the state and its citizens than all the courts had done in the 90 years preceding the creation of the tax court in 1986. And I also believe that the tax court may be the only court in the United States where its opinions are published in the regional reporting system in which published cases appear from the higher courts. So many of Judge Fisher's decisions have been cited by other courts around the United States on important tax issues. So I think it's clear that the judge has met and surpassed any of the goals that the legislature had in mind back in 1985. And I wanted to say a few more words about what it is like to practice before Judge Fisher as lawyers representing our clients. First, the judge always emphasizes very strongly the principles of civility and professionalism in the courtroom. Sometimes a few of us get a little overheated when we start arguing about some esoteric tax issue, like, say, the definition of a tax-exempt dietary supplement. The judge would quickly calm us down and remind us, hey, it's only about the money. We're not going to execute your client after the decision comes out today, even if he loses. He might have to pay a little more tax, but he's going to survive the process. The judge would always set a preliminary case conference for every appeal that was filed. And in those conferences, all the formality was gone, and we would sit around the table. We'd have great times trading stories with Judge Fisher about people we'd known, and the judge would tell us about his days as a prosecuting attorney and the colorful characters he's known over the years. And most of the people who regularly practice in the tax court are friends outside the tax court, even though we may be on opposite sides of the case. And Judge Fisher is the one that sets that tone for professionalism in his courtroom. Finally, once you submitted your case to the judge for a decision, you always knew that it was going to be researched and analyzed very carefully, and that you would receive a well-written and thoughtful opinion. So whether you won or lost, you knew that the judge was giving his best to try to determine the answer that he felt that the legislature or the writers of the Constitution intended. So in conclusion, I would just like to say it's been a great privilege to practice before Judge Fisher, and I think I can say that on behalf of all the attorneys who have done so, and it's also been a heck of a lot of fun. We really enjoyed it. Thank you, Judge.
Thank you. Thank you. Representing the Indianapolis Bar Association, in particular its tax section this morning, is Mark McNulty. Mark McNulty is not only a person who holds a degree in business, he's a licensed accountant and an attorney. And his expertise, of course, follows in corporate and individual taxes. Thanks for coming to honor Judge Fisher this morning.
Good morning. Good morning, Chief Justice, Justice Baker, Justice Fisher. On behalf of the Indianapolis Bar Association, we want to congratulate Judge Fisher on a wonderful career and look forward, hope he looks forward to his future endeavors. As a member of the Indianapolis Bar Association, that touches a lot of lawyers and also a lot of law students. And I remember in law school that Judge Fisher came and spoke to one of our state and local taxes on behalf of Professor Jagan. And that was a very enlightening lecture in order to see how the tax court works. And it was a great honor to have you there that day. And also, from the Indianapolis Bar Association, we would like to welcome you as one of the newest speakers for the Bar Review. So he'll be teaching the state and local tax portion of the Bar Review, and I'd like to welcome him to that. And thank you very much for your service.
Thank you very much.
That's great news. And now, a special moment. I call on Judge Fisher's daughter, Ann Craun, and his son, Tom Fisher, for remarks. I'm sorry.
Erica Aker.
I beg your pardon. Good for you. I passed over Erica Aker, staff attorney to the tax court.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Justice. Justices, members of the judiciary, and distinguished guests. It is my honor and privilege to represent Judge Fisher's law clerks, past and present, as we gather today to celebrate his near quarter century of service to the judiciary and the people of the state of Indiana. If one were to ask 100 law clerks what they learned during the course of their clerkships, I think universally each would answer critical thinking and writing skills. That is understandable, for that is the nature and goal of a judicial clerkship. Yet, for we fortunate ones who have clerked for Judge Fisher, the lesson was not so singular. Indeed, in our time with Judge Fisher, not only did we learn to become better lawyers, but in many ways, we learned to become better people. Judge Fisher is bright, well-read, both professionally and personally, and informed. He is passionate about learning and epitomizes what it means to be a lifelong learner. By way of his example, he has shown us that we aren't mere spectators to the game of life. Rather, we actively and consciously choose every day how we will be shaped as individuals. He has shown us that because we are all active participants in life's game, what we get out of it is commensurate with what we put into it. Judge Fisher is unassuming in his nature. He has a droll wit and has been known to tell a joke or two, or 3, or 4. In any event, he relates well with people and puts them at ease, whether it's in the courtroom, the break room, or his living room. Through his quiet leadership, Judge Fisher has encouraged us to treat others with kindness and to face life's often stressful challenges with both patience and humor. Judge Fisher is fair. When someone seeks the opportunity to be heard, he is gracious in his offering of a forum. He is not quick to his conclusions. Rather, he seeks to understand all sides of an issue before making a decision. During his time on the bench, he has often been called upon to make unpopular decisions. In making those decisions, however, he has never been swayed by what is popular, what is easy, or what makes good fiscal policy. Instead, he has been guided solely by what the law has indicated should be the result. In working with the judge, we have all been able to recognize the inherent value in listening to others, in staying objective, and in keeping your word. Judge Fisher has been unwavering in his commitment to serving others. For years, he has delivered meals to Indianapolis residents, often taking one of his clerks along for the ride. Through Rotary, he has given countless hours of his time, talent, and energy to better not only the local community, but the global one as well. He is a dedicated and involved alumnus of both Earlham College and the Indiana University Maurer School of Law. Through his selfless acts, Judge Fisher has inspired many of us to become active voices within our own communities and for our own charitable causes. Judge Fisher is a devoted son, brother, husband, father, and grandfather. He too is a loyal friend. That devotion and loyalty has been a constant reminder to each of us of the importance in maintaining a healthy, well-adjusted work-life balance, in staying grounded in the relationships that mean the most, and in remaining true to oneself. Judge Fisher, we congratulate you on your remarkable 24-year career, and thank you for allowing us to play a part in it. As Indiana's first and only tax court judge, you've blazed a trail in what was uncharted legal territory. As a mentor and friend to your clerks, you've given each of us a roadmap by which to forge our own paths. We wish great happiness to you and Barb as you continue on with your life's journey.
Thank you. And now in regular order, Ann Craun and Tom Fisher.
Not very good at this. Thank you for having me. This is really very personal for me. When I was a little girl, I used to ask my dad what the G stood for in his name. He always gave me the same answer, good guy. And even though I would giggle at his answer, knowing that's not what it was for, I somehow knew that he was right. He is a good guy. Your father is supposed to teach you, guide you, and lead you. I am one of the lucky ones because he did just that. He taught me to be honest and hardworking. I remember one time taking an extra 50 cents from my mom's purse, thinking she would never notice. She did, but instead of getting yelled at or spanked, my dad told me to go get the dictionary and look up the word honest. I had to write down what it meant and what I had done that wasn't honest. Beyond any physical punishment I could have received, the disappointment from him at my dishonesty was enough to set me straight. Growing up, Dad worked a lot. He was always at the office, at a meeting, or out in the yard or the pool, working. I don't remember him ever staying home because he was sick. In fact, I can only remember him ever being sick enough to stay in bed a couple of times. One was a Christmas Day when we were celebrating with Dr. Petrie and his family. In fact, it was so rare that Doc Petrie drove into town to check on him. The other time was the day that he was appointed to this position. It was his birthday, and I was home from college to help celebrate, or home for the summer. Anyway, the phone rings about 9 o'clock in the evening, and nobody ever called after 9 o'clock at night. He'd already gone to bed around 7 o'clock because he was not feeling well. So I answered the phone, and a man on the other end asked to speak to Tom Fisher. I politely told him he was already in bed for the evening and I could take a message. The man seemed a little shocked that Dad was in bed already. I told him that he had not been feeling well and went to bed a little early. The man on the other end said, "Oh, well, okay, this is Governor Orr." I immediately said, "Hang on, I'll get up for this." He took the phone call. Dad has always worked hard as a volunteer, too. He has been a Rotarian since I can remember, and his trips to Africa are inspiring. He's always believed in service to his community, wherever that may be. So to me, as his daughter, the G really does stand for good guy. Thanks, Dad, for being the son, brother, husband, father, grandfather, and state servant that you are.
Thank you.
Not used to facing this direction when I stand at this point.
No lights on in front of you.
Where's my timer, Jeff?
Free to go.
Well, it was very hard to think about what to say today. As you can imagine, my dad has been an inspiration on a number of levels for a very long time. He's been a professional, example, an example as a hardworking and honest lawyer, as a humorist, someone with a sense of humor that's so bad it's good. There are just so many things that are very difficult to live up to. But what I really want to focus on this morning is his example to me as a parent. The way that he showed his love and support over the years, the way that he supported and nurtured not only my life and my career, but my sister, both of our families, and my mother. And there's one story in particular that I think exemplifies for me one of the biggest lessons I've learned from him in watching and learning about what it means to be a good father. The story has to do with being there for your kids and being there and showing up and supporting and showing that it matters what you do. And my father was there for any number of sporting events when I was a kid, when I was in high school, and all the way through college and law school. And he even made time to go watch a few arguments here and there that I was participating in. But the story that I think of when I think about my dad and his unwavering support and his constant presence in my life and his demonstration that what I did mattered has to do with an otherwise obscure cross-country meet back in 1984 or so. I think he knows what's coming. My father had what for that community was a distinctive car. It was a 1984 Ford Thunderbird, maroon in color. And it was distinctive in part because Ford had changed the shape of the Thunderbird in recent years, and not too many people had this particular car. So it was a small town, and people, you sort of knew what your neighbors drove. Well, there was a cross-country meet, and I was, rather mediocre. It's the great thing about small towns and small high schools. You can be a mediocre athlete and still be on the varsity. So we had laid out the course early in the year, and we changed our course every year. The coach wanted to vary it for us. So I think this was probably the first meet of the season. And my father was going to be there, and he said he would be there, and by gosh, he was there. And how did I find out he was there? Well, the race was ongoing. I think we were about a mile in, and there was a strip that ran through near the parking lot, not in the parking lot, but near the parking lot. It was sort of an access road, and the course at that point happened to cover that part of the access road. I was not out in front of the pack. I was rather far to the back, and as I ran along and as I was trying to think in my mind and get the rhythm of running and trying to be sure I was meeting my time standards, I noticed something was going on in front of me, which is that the runners seemed to be parting a bit like the Red Sea in opposite directions. And there was some mild remonstrating, and I even heard the name Fisher being yelled. And what should I see but a few steps later, but the back end of that 1984 Ford Thunderbird in the middle of the cross-country course. I think I just stopped and dove under the car and hid for the rest of the day. I actually laughed it off. I thought, okay, this is just one of those little things, and went on with the race. Took a little bit of kidding about it afterwards. But in my mind, that story has always held a special place because it reminds me that my dad was always there. Sometimes you may not like it when he's there, but he was there. And as I look to him as an example to follow in so many different ways, that's one of the most meaningful to me. And I hope that I can, come somewhere near the ballpark that he built for being a good parent. So thank you, Dad, for parking your car in the middle of the cross-country course, and for being there that day and for every other day. So congratulations on a fantastic career.
Thank you.
We have a gift.
What did you say? They said I should open it now, and I need to open this one, other one too. Court is adjourned.
Oh, outstanding. Yeah, outstanding.
That's great.
That's just great. That's just great.
Wait till I see Gary Barble. Gary did another cartoon years ago, and I can't find it. It had me with a beanie with a propeller on it. I sent him an email that my beanie did not have a propeller on it. While I'm up here, I'll open this one from this street. thought you said it was easy to open.
Yeah, where is Mitch? That's what you need.
I do have a knife.
Yeah, the ISBA is achieving a reputation here.
Very nice, thank you. It's a clock. The State Bar the ISBA honors your 24 years of service. Thank you very much. That's
Yeah, thank you. Well, I'm going to call on our honoree in a moment. But I'd like to restate some of the themes, just three of them, that we've heard from some of our friends. The first one might be thought of as the question, why does it matter that Indiana has had a tax court and a superb judge of a tax court? Well, you wouldn't have to look any farther than earlier this week when President Obama and the Business Roundtable convened. It was a moment when it wasn't certain yet whether the tax bill that he had forged with members of Congress would in fact pass the House of Representatives in the form in which it passed the Senate and therefore be on the way to his desk. There was a lot of press from that event that had to do, of course, with how high or how low taxes should be, what their form should be. But more than anything, I thought interesting the press coverage about the value of predictability and certainty to the nation's economy. And so it was with our state in the mid-'80s when, as Larry Stroble says, the decision was made to create a place where we'd hope to get thoughtful and predictable tax law that would benefit us all. And Tom's splendid service has made that dream and that hope a reality. Second, just mentioned in passing, but deserving more, we don't normally on occasions like this talk about individual cases. But think of what Judge Fisher's series of decisions in town of St. John have meant. You could go through this building or read the Journal-Gazette or the Evansville Courier for decades in which people rightly complained about the clunkiness and the unfairness and the inefficiency of our system of valuing property. And Tom Fisher did more than any other single person to bring modernity, predictability, and fairness to that system. It has been better for economic development. It has been better for homeowners, for people who make investments, and in the end, better for all of us who rely on government services. And that brings me to the third theme that's been a part of this exemplary run, which is that conspicuously, Tom Fisher has proven himself to be someone who cares about peace and justice more broadly than in the work which he is called upon to do in his work at the court. You could not ask for a better exemplar of someone who puts his shoulder to the wheel consistently and thoughtfully in public service and in his private life, proves to be an inspiration to so many. Now, there is one last point I want to cover before I call on Judge Fisher, because the record needs to be set straight. When Judge Fisher called to say he was retiring, I said a few words about how many great decisions he had rendered, and he said to me, "I'd feel better about that if I had ever been affirmed by the Indiana Supreme Court." I said, "You've got to be kidding." "Oh, no," he said. "I don't think," I said, "Ever?" No, I don't think ever," he said. Not true. Not true. I asked one of my clerks to go through this quarter century of record, and there have been 205 times when people have come to the Indiana Supreme Court asking to correct something Judge Fisher has done. In 148 of those 205 times, the court read the petition for review and said, "This doesn't even pass the smell test. The petition is denied." In 57 cases, the petition has been granted, and we have heard the case on the merits, and you have been affirmed and reversed in 7 cases, reversed 28 times, and affirmed outright 22 times. Does this sound like a pretty good record for an appellate judge?
I should be so lucky.
All right. And my clerk, Kit McDonald, found a sort of exemplar, and I quote my predecessor, Chief Justice Gibbon. The case is State Board versus LaCie Broadcasting Corporation, 511 Northeast 2nd, 1009. We are in total agreement with Judge Fisher's observation in his opinion and see no reason to paraphrase it in our own words. Judge Fisher's opinion is therefore approved and adopted in its entirety for the guidance of the bench and the bar and the administrative offices of this state. The tax court is sustained by a vote of 5-0. Ladies and gentlemen, I invite you to congratulate Indiana's most affirmed appellate judge, Tom Fisher.
Well, I wouldn't want to get into a, you-know-what match about Dick Gibbon also said that the Supreme Court was infallible because it was last. They're not last because they're infallible. Thank you very much. I am deeply honored that you would all come and brave the weather today and take time from your schedules in this busy holiday season to attend this event. However, I must say that I am somewhat reminded of an event or of a time about 20 years ago. I was in Florida visiting my parents who were there for the winter, and the Today Show was on. And must have been a slow day because they were covering the funeral of a long-serving Southern Indiana politician. And they interviewed a high state official who was attending the funeral, and this high state official opined that he thought most of the people there were there to make sure this politician was dead. Well, I assure you I'm not dead, but I am going to retire as soon as my successor is appointed and qualified. I want to thank Chief Justice Shepard and Chief Judge Baker for participating in this ceremony. Customarily, when an appellate judge retires, the conduct of the ceremony is not much of a question, as there are other members of both the Supreme Court and the Court of Appeals to preside and conduct the ceremony. When I decided to retire, the question of how to conduct the ceremony, or even have one, was prominent. After all, it would be odd or in bad taste for me to preside, sort of like presiding over one's own funeral. But
Unfortunately, and without hesitation, both Chief Justice Shepard and Chief Judge Baker agreed to participate, and I thank you both for doing so, and also for your courtesies and friendship over the years. In addition, I thank the other members of both courts likewise for the courtesies and friendship that you've shown. You've been gracious. The Court of Appeals have been gracious, or both courts actually have been gracious about letting me use their respective courtrooms when I've needed a courtroom. One thing the tax court has never had is its own courtroom. I wanted to have it in a government building, or have the proceedings in a government building and not in a private office building. And there was a judicial building that was to have been built that, for various reasons, never happened. And there would have been a courtroom in that building, but that hasn't happened. But it's worked out very well, at least from my perspective, that the both courts have been gracious in letting me speak or hold court in their courtrooms. I also want to take this opportunity to introduce my family who are here. You've met my grandchildren who very ably led us in the Pledge of Allegiance: Molly, Natalie, Corey, Graham, Emily, and Hannah. Thank you very much for doing that. You did Grandpa proud. You've also met my son and daughter, Ann and Tom, and I thank you both for your kind words and for your continuing love and support. I was touched by your remarks, and there's not much I can say. It was just wonderful to hear you talk. Unfortunately, my dear wife Barbara could not be here today. She has some health issues that prevented her in attendance, and she's been a partner, a friend, and love of my life for the last 47 years. She's put up with the stress of my attending law school, the midnight hours and late nights at the office during the years of law practice, and generally putting up with me. I thank her for all of that. I love her dearly. My mother, Bonnie Fisher, is here from Traverse City, Michigan. She was transported here by my brother and sister-in-law, Joe Fisher and Deborah Lynch. Thank you both for bringing Mom here and for you being here. Also, some of my other siblings are here. My sister Jane and brother John from the Detroit area are both here. Sister Betsy couldn't make it from Franklin, Tennessee because of the weather in southern Indiana and Kentucky, but I know she would love to have been here. Also, my son-in-law and daughter-in-law, Mitch Craun and Kathy Fisher, are here, and thank you for being here and for all the support that you have given and for being great parents to our grandchildren. 3 of my cousins are here: Walt and Joanne Abel from Columbus, Charlotte Sherfy from Danville, and Jim and Roberta Graham from Brownsburg. Did Ruth come? Aunt Ruth here? Aunt Ruth, my aunt didn't come. She has some health issues as well. But thank you all, family, for your love and support and friendship. In any profession, no one can get anything done without a hardworking and dedicated staff. The tax court is no exception. Most of you have met my court administrator, Karen Graves. Karen also assumed responsibility for putting this event together, and I am honored that she would do so and appreciate all of her hard work these past 16 years. Karen, thank you very much for all you've done and for the support and the way you've handled the work of the administrative work in the tax court. It's been invaluable. Also, I've been blessed with terrific, hardworking law clerks. Whatever success I've had has been due to their hard work, and any failures or errors are strictly mine. Thank you all also to Erica Aker, Staff Attorney Erica, for her remarks today and for her hard work. She's been a valuable support over the years she's been with us. She was a clerk and then went away and then came back and is just really my, another right-hand person. And current clerk Brandy Chain, and thank you, Brandy, for all you do. It's been wonderful to work with all of the clerks. Many of my former clerks are here. They had a dinner for me last night that was wonderful. They were telling stories that I had never heard of. I can't believe I did some of those things. But we always had a good time when we take the road trips, especially. We stopped and saw the cement egg in Mentone and the anti-aircraft gun in Worthington. and some other scenes around the state of Indiana on our trips. Would all those who are former staff here please stand and be recognized? It's really been great. Thank you all. Thank you. Now, I've got some other people to recognize, and I don't know if they're here. I hope they are. Is Bob Abernathy here?
So far.
Bob didn't make it. Well, Bob was my first bailiff, and Bob grew up with me in Flint, Michigan. Lived down the street. He's my first playmate, and he came to Indiana over some years ago, and we reconnected, and he served as my bailiff, and I was hoping he'd be here today. How about Gene McFadden? Is Gene here? Gene's not here either. Well, Gene also went to Flint Northern High School with me. Sat behind me in homeroom. Was all city tackle, and has moved to Indiana. And to paraphrase, or in the words of late humorist Herb Schreiner, all three of us came to Indiana as soon as we heard about it. Several of my colleagues from the Jasper County Bar are here. Former Jasper Circuit Court Judge and current Judge of the U.S. Court of Appeals has been introduced, Mike Cady. Mike, thank you very much for being here. I'm honored that you would come down. Former Jasper Superior Court Judge Phil McGraw and his wife Ellen are here. And former Earlham College classmate and law partner and retired judge of the Jasper Circuit Court, Dwayne Doherty and his wife Lynn are here. And John Casey and his wife Mary Linda are here as well. Mike Riley was going to come. Is Mike here? Didn't make it. You know, I'm going to be a senior judge in Jasper County. And I'm taking names. Also, another person that said he was coming, probably isn't here either. Is Dan Evans here? No. Dan said he was coming, and Dan was instrumental in my appointment. He was a big help to me in navigating the waters of Marion County politics during the selection process, and was a big help, and has been a friend ever since. Also present are many of my Rotary colleagues. They've got to know that their influence has enriched my life as I have seen their service to our community and the world, and thank you for all you do. And also, some of my friends from the Columbia Club Breakfast Gang are here. We get together every morning, just about, work out most of the time, and tell lies and scratch, and they have a great time. And it's a great way to start today, and they're a great core of support. And thank you all for being here. I probably have missed some people I should recognize, and if I have, I apologize. But you need to know that all of you here have been important in my life, and I thank you from the bottom of my heart. On occasions such as this, especially when it is the last time I will say anything that anyone is likely to pay any attention to, one thinks of what you might say as a parting shot. And knowing my temperament and my smart aleck style, some of you are probably saying, oh boy, now he's going to really give us a parting shot. But I'm going to resist that temptation today because I wouldn't know where to stop. One thing, though, that's on my mind is judging and the role of the judiciary. At a continuing legal education seminar held last week in this courtroom, the subject of the seminar was the pocket veto case. And this is a case that occurred back in 1968 and continued in various forms until 1971. The details are somewhat involved, and I won't try and recount it, except to say that it involved a court that was elected in a typical partisan fashion and helped sow the seeds for the constitutional amendment in 1970 that provided for our current method of selecting appellate judges. The high point, or perhaps low point, of the case was that the appellate court, as it was then called, held the state auditor in contempt of court, and she led the various folks on a merry chase through the State House, locking herself in the governor's office. Was quite a case, and the case isn't that simple. And as long as people discuss the case, there will be disagreements about the actions of all the participants, the courts, the litigants, the attorneys, and others. It's an interesting episode in our state's political and legal history. At that seminar, Justice Sullivan was presiding, and he read part of the order of the appellate court of February 1970, in which the appellate court held the auditor in contempt. And I'm going to quote from part of that order that I think most of it's what Justice Sullivan read last week. Quote, in the case of Marbury versus Madison, decided by the Supreme Court of the United States, a basic and inherent right of the judiciary was established, that being the right to review acts of Congress and actions of the executive to determine their constitutionality. The effect of that decision was to establish that the Constitution is supreme in case of conflict, and further that the court is guardian of the Constitution. The courts have traditionally, in a democratic form of government, had the exclusive responsibility, in fact the duty, to interpret the law, the Constitution, the statutes of the General Assembly, and the case law, and apply the interpretation to the case at issue. The framers of our Constitution provided a system of checks and balances because they realized and appreciated the lesson of history that no man or group of men can be safely entrusted with unlimited power. They established this Constitution to be changed only by the procedure of amendment in order that the fundamental principles of our government should be secure against the dangers of temporary popular passion or the personal prejudices of public office holders. What check is there on the actions of the executive if it is not bound by the law, as the law is determined by the courts, pursuant to the duty prescribed for them by the Constitution? What check is there on the acts of the General Assembly if redress by the courts of grievances growing out of those acts is unavailable or worse, ineffective? The judicial branch of government is checked by the very nature of its creation and its existence. Courts properly have neither the power of the purse, the General Assembly does, or the power of the sword, the governor does. Neither the purse nor the sword can protect the liberty of free citizens. The issues raised in this case, in some instances 3 or 4 times over, have been answered by this court, not ignored or overlooked. The defenses raised on behalf of the auditor in the contempt proceeding were not new or novel. They were the same issues we have determined before. The auditor asserts that she is bound by the Constitution and the laws of the state. We assert the law is before her. Her duty is clear. There is no malice in our order. There is only the intent that the dictates of the people through their Constitution be observed, and that a government of law for the state of Indiana be preserved, unquote. More recently, during his confirmation hearing, Chief Justice John Roberts said, judges have to decide hard questions when they come up in the context of a particular case. That is their obligation, but they have to decide those questions according to the rule of law, not on their own social preferences, not their policy views, not their personal preferences, according to the rule of law, unquote. And so I guess this decision of some 40 years ago and the view expressed by Chief Justice Roberts represents my view of the role of a judge, and I hope all judges stay mindful of that role and place in our system of government. At a retirement ceremony a couple of months ago, Justice Boehm revealed a long-kept secret, what judges wear under their robes. Now, I'm not going to divulge one of the big secrets is how you fold a legal-size sheet of paper so it'll fit in an envelope, and I'm not going to disclose that secret. But I am going to show you what judges wear when deciding cases. And so, to paraphrase the words of General Douglas MacArthur in his farewell address to Congress in 1951, while I don't plan to fade away, as I plan to stay active as a senior judge and in other activities, I do now close my active judicial career, a judge who tried to do his duty as God gave him the light to see that duty. Thank you very much.
Well, I hope you'll all join us to give your personal thanks and congratulations to Judge Fisher at a reception that'll start as soon as we adjourn. To get ready to do that, I'll call on Pastor Stan Banker of the First Friends meeting here in Indianapolis.
Let us pray. Our eternal God, whose giving and loving knows no ending, we gather today as a chorus in unison, expressing our appreciation for the faithful service of our servant to humanity and to the state of Indiana, Judge Thomas Good Guy Fisher. And now, in his retirement and other activities, may you grant to him joy and happiness seasoned with an everlasting sense of fulfillment of a job well done and life well lived yesterday, today, and in all the tomorrows. Together we pray. Amen.
Amen. Well, I hope you'll join us outside. Thank you all so much for coming. The court will rise.
All rise. This court is adjourned.